Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are so thrilled to have everyone here for our very first in-person ORPM event. Today is history in the making. I'm Deborah Romano from CBRE, and I'm joined by my ORPM colleagues, Mike Anello from Turner & Townsend, Kirsten Beck, Avis & Young, Joe Bolano, Colliers, Fran Graham, Newmark. Thank you all for joining us. First, let's acknowledge what the ORPM Alliance is and how it came about. For those scratching their heads as to what ORPM means, it stands for Owners, Representatives, and Project Managers. And the Alliance is currently made up of 16 firms practicing in this capacity in New York City. Let's reflect back to the early days of the pandemic, March 2020. We were all sitting at home watching the world change around us. The world was shutting down. We suddenly had a new member of the household, and that member was Zoom. Zoom took over our lives. We had to get on a Zoom call. We were Zooming all day. We were in Zoom fatigue. I challenge all of you to count how many ways you can use Zoom in a sentence. Pretty wild times indeed, but we knew we had to keep going. We've all seen the innovation that came about as a result of the pandemic. The ORPM Alliance is the product of that era for the project management industry. Kirsten, what was your reaction when you received a call from Frank Alvarado inviting you to join a Zoom call with all of the other project management firms in New York City to talk about the impact of the pandemic on project management and what our message would be to our clients?
Well, honestly, initially I was kind of shocked. We all know each other, know of one another, but we've never really had a forum like this before. And I think in the beginning, if I can speak for most of us, it was a little bit of group therapy. How are we getting through this? What are we doing? Is anybody showering? And I think it was really nice to have that support in the beginning, to know that we weren't the only ones. But now what I'm excited about is seeing what is going to come out of the ORPM Alliance through our outreach and education and bringing other people into this profession and really being able to share what this role is and how valuable it is to our clients.
Joe, what about you? What was your reaction?
Well, first, she forgot whether we were wearing pajama pants or not.
Well, if you showered, you took your pajamas.
Hopefully. So for me, it was interesting because the call came from David Horowitz in my office, where I thought maybe something had happened with David and he had lost his mind, to actually tell me that competitors in the industry were coming together to really discuss our industry, what we do here as project managers. So I was very much in shock as well. But I said, why not? I mean, every other part of our industry, the architects have the AIA, the CMs have a series of groups, the engineers have groups. We've really never had that. And I think it's also one of the reasons that many others who don't use what we do as a service don't understand who we are and what we're about, because we really haven't done a great job messaging that out. So in credit to Frank and his thought process, this is a great idea. I think it's time has come for us to get together, discuss amongst ourselves as industry colleagues how we can elevate the presence of project management and how we can help each other to make it the best as possible.
Mike, what is the definition of an ORPM, and what is the mission statement of this group?
We represent our clients to drive successful delivery of their design and construction projects from inception to completion and beyond. And I think as a mission for the group is to kind of collaborate collectively as a group of peers in the industry to not only increase our value add to our clients, but to push the industry forward.
Fran, what do you think is the biggest misconception of what an ORPM is or isn't?
I think that the biggest thing is that they think we might be the contractors who are building, that we're the construction managers, when really we are what I always call herding the cats. So we're putting the consultants together, and many times we're not understood and brought to the table early enough, and too many people push our role aside instead of bringing us to the forefront and having us work with the rest of the team to build the right team for the tenant, for the building owner, and really complete the project, like Mike said, from beginning to end. That's our job.
Joe, you work in the healthcare sector. What do you think of the timing of this group coming together during a global pandemic?
Great question. For me, it was really surreal in a way because much of what we've been discussing during the pandemic, particularly in its early days, is something that I've been doing for most of my career, really on owner's rep on the healthcare side. And it was interesting to see how much of what we've been discussing on the healthcare side now became common language in the corporate world and elsewhere, where healthy buildings and how we really allow people to feel comfortable that they were in an environment that they can work and really occupy without the challenges of the pandemic was giving us. So early on, I recall we had a panel, a building congress that Frank led, and that conversation came up about the life safety aspect, the wellness aspect of buildings, and how much of what was learned throughout the healthcare industry was now being absorbed in corporate America and beyond. And I think that is here to stay. I believe that we're seeing that trend continue. Now people see healthy spaces as really a key into going back to work and feeling comfortable that they are in an environment that they can work and play and live. And I think it's a credit to the other industries that they've been able to embrace much of what healthcare has been doing.
So Mike, let me ask you a question. How many times have you heard someone say, in the context of what we do, we manage budget and schedule on time and on budget, and feel a little bit frustrated because we do so much more than that? The real value that we bring to our clients is in the form of risk mitigation and problem solving. Can you talk to us about risk, the different types of risks, and how we help our clients manage them?
Yeah, so that is a frustrating statement, and risk really incorporates all those things, schedule and budget, and there are many different types of risk, but I think our job as PMs and owners reps is to prepare our clients for what's coming down the pike. Getting in front of risks and early communication of those potential risks and what the impacts could be from a quality perspective, from a safety perspective, from a budget or schedule perspective is key. So, we're the experts in our field, so we need to be able to identify those things early on. We need to be able to communicate those to our clients. They're on the hook to make the decisions. We don't make decisions for them, but we need to equip them with the information they need to make the right decision, the appropriate one, and manage to their risk tolerance. So it is quite the underpinning of everything we do. Schedule and budget is the commonly used phrase, but I think we all here could agree that risk is probably the most important thing that we do for our clients.
Kirsten, how have you seen our role as an ORPM evolve over your time in this industry?
So I think those two questions really lead well into that, because I think, early on in my career in project management, it was oftentimes a much more administrative job, keeping track of things, task lists, project schedules. But over the years, it really has evolved into a truly trusted advisor role. If done right, if brought in the very beginning of a project, we can inform the client in the very beginning in selecting their space or representing them as the landlord, because we are on both sides, and really educate them and help them identify those risks from the beginning. So I think that this role has really evolved into us being a key integrated member of the real estate team in making those decisions. And then the rest of it comes after that. Once you've made all of those big decisions with all of the information available to you through us as resources, then we execute on that plan. And so that's the biggest change that I've seen.
And by the way, I would like to comment, I think the administration you refer to, I think that is really the biggest risk to the reputation for us, that we're paper pushers, right? We never want to be seen as just pushing the paper
Right.
around.
And I think that is a misconception that people have. You know, they're like, oh, well, we have someone in the office that can take notes. I'm like, but what do they do with those notes?
Right.
When they write down that a decision was made or that something has to happen, writing it down doesn't resolve the issue.
I call that active management of the project, not passive management, right?
Yes,
Reading the meeting minutes, yeah.
Right.
Okay. Fran, let's talk about the advisory role that we play during the transactional part of a project, both the pre-lease and the post-lease role.
Well, I think that to me is one of the biggest roles that, as you know, Kirsten was saying, that what we see early on, we can bring with us through the project. So the earlier we're brought into the project, we can go through the lease, we can help the brokers look at what they're getting, whether it's electricity, condenser water, but I think importantly how the landlord, if it's a tenant rep project, is turning over the space. And then as we move through the project, we can reference back to what we helped negotiate in the beginning to bring it all through to the end, knowing what our commitments are, knowing what dates we committed to, knowing how much condenser water we do have, so we don't over-design, we don't under-design. We know what the space is going to look like when we walk in, and we help the team work together to, as Mike had said, manage the risk. If we know early on what the risks are, we can help to manage them during the construction portion of it and through to the end.
Speaking of early onboarding of project managers, and this question is for any of you, what percentage of projects do you think are now including project management from the beginning versus somewhere kind of in the middle?
That's a trick question. It would be great to have that data, by the way, for all of us.
Yeah.
But I think we always experience the client who gets himself in trouble and then calls us to try to figure out how to get out of it. And my take on that is always that, unwinding a bad decision takes much more effort than being up there up front. I mean, all of the CMs show you that backwards S. The more you spend up front, the less you spend at the end. I think we need to create our own backwards S and say the more you involve us up front, the less it's going to cost you. And not just money and time, but all the aggravation that goes with it. I don't know the answer to your question, but I would say probably there's a bigger chunk of projects that we all see that are after the fact. They've hired the architect, sometimes they've hired the engineer, they've secured the space, and then they throw us in there and say, manage these guys. And it's difficult.
Is it getting better though?
I think in some cases it is, and I think it's our job to some extent to educate some broker, and educating them that bringing us in early just only helps. It gives them a support. We read hundreds of leases, and we're looking at different things. Then there's always an attorney. They're looking at certain clauses. The broker's looking at certain clauses. The earlier they bring us in, the more value we add, and the more we can help mitigate those risks. And we talk a lot about in a project, there's really 80% of the effort is in the beginning, in the planning and the design, and it's really only about 20% of the cost. All of that, spending that time up front really does save time and money later. And the more that we can get that message out, and the more that ORPM can help us do that, I think it's just about educating people. Nobody thinks, oh, I don't need an architect, right? Nobody like, let me sign this lease. I'm just going to draw like a few boxes. I'm sure it'll be fine. Our profession is becoming elevated and becoming a more high-profile role. And I think that's because of all the hard work of everybody in this group.
And hopefully the ORPM Alliance
That's what
will
I was gonna
continue
I was just going to
drive
say
that.
that during the pandemic, I think that a lot of, as brokers were all sitting at home, we were all sitting at home. Frank called us all, but we were all sitting alone. And I think that all of us were thinking about it, but we didn't know how to help people because we didn't know how to reach out. And I think more and more, I know for ourselves, I think that brokers started to say, I have these people that I can reach out to, let me see if they can help me. Well, we were glad to help. And then that made a relationship. And I think that a big part of our job is a relationship. And the relationships we build not only within our companies, but with our clients outside of that are the most important.
I have to tell you a quick funny story, though, just getting back to that day that Frank decided to reach out to everyone. When he first told myself and a few others in our group what his plan was, I said, well, how are we going to get together with our competitors? How are we going to do this? He said, I'm going to call them up. And I said, oh, okay. Back to the topic of risk. Joe, supply chain. It's a big deal now. In normal times, what are we doing to help our clients manage the supply chain? And should we be doing anything different now because of what's going on?
That's a great question. So that is, I would say, without exaggeration, probably the biggest risk we face today, the supply chain. I don't think anyone foresaw in the beginning of the pandemic that shutting the borders down and being so difficult to get product in and out of the United States, and then stressing manufacturers here in the U.S. to produce more was going to be an issue. But it is an issue, continues to be an issue. And I think typically we always looked at the simple things in the early supply chains. Now you have to think outside the box a little bit. The idea of managing during design and creating a risk management plan along the supply chain in design has to be looked at. You need to be able to get into that space of design with the owner, with the architect and engineer, and come up with different ways to approach the same problem, so that you're able to, hit the road running. If you can't get a specific product, something that you will not see in time for the project, you need to mitigate in procurement. One of the things we're seeing today is the idea of pre-purchasing product more than ever before and having it stored off-site. And I think it's up to us to educate the clients on the cost benefits of doing something like that, of saying, yes, we're going to rent the space, we're going to take delivery, and we're going to hold it until we need it, but here's the cost benefit to it. How much do we gain on schedule? We had a specific client where we pre-purchased medical equipment for them and locked the price for 3 years. 3 months later, we were paying 200% on shipping rates. That client doesn't have to worry. That equipment is coming in locked in at a certain unit price for the next 3 years, regardless of where the price changes. And that's the value that we bring to the team. So mitigating, estimating in terms of estimating dam management in the process of supply chain, being able to inform the client of all the risks that are out there regarding supply chain and the steps we could take, really is something we need to start building into every discussion we have.
Are you having any issues now where the messaging coming from the contractors is a little bit downplayed, let's say, and you're having to paint the real picture for your clients?
Yes, I think one of the challenges that everyone here would agree to, we face all the time, is the different messages that the client gets from all the different players in the game. And as you can see, my colleagues are all laughing, because whether it's the design team on both sides, whether it's the CM, even their own clients, the client gets a tremendous amount of messaging with all different ideas. I think this is where the benefit of hiring an advisor, and I think that if it was up to me, I'd change all of our names, because we are a critical advisor, an extension of the owner, to really map out what the message is. I think messaging and communication is key when you start these projects out, so that you don't have people really chattering to the client in different phases, because it does add some issues for us down the road when someone is messaging, hey, yes, we can do that, and they really can't. And again, that's part of why you bring on an owner's rep and you let them run the project. I'm all a proponent for that, so whoever's watching, that's what we want.
Not a super awesome conversation to have with your clients to express that a schedule takes 30% longer than it did 2 years ago. But we need to set those expectations early on, otherwise you're destined for failure at that point.
doesn't serve any of us to yes the client to death or
Right.
tell them they can get something that we know they can't. And it can be a challenge because we don't want to deliver what can be perceived as bad news, but it's honesty, and we have to be honest and have that integrity with our clients. And we've all been in a meeting where something is presented and the client's eyes are lighting up and they're so excited, and in the background we're like, we're never going to get this, we're never going to get this.
Yeah.
And it's incumbent upon us to confirm whatever those other messages are, or to diffuse them. If someone else on the team is promising our client something that we don't believe is realistic, it's incumbent upon us to verify that and correct it if it's wrong, or confirm it if it's accurate, so that the client gets what they want.
We need to be the voice of reason, and I think delivering a tough message is really tough the first time you do it as a project manager.
Yes.
Right? So Mike, one of the reasons why we developed the Alliance was education. We want to educate our clients, we want to educate anyone that's considering the ORPM profession as a career path. What would your elevator speech be to a client that never worked with a project manager, and maybe they were considering it, maybe they were on the fence? What would you say to them?
So I'm not great at elevator speeches because it's very hard for me to keep responses to less than 30 seconds. But I think it's important for us. Most of our clients their core business is not delivering real estate corporate projects, design and construction projects. It is ours. I don't fix my own car because that's not what I do. That's not my specialty. So using that as a kind of jumping point to make them understand the value that we add and what we bring to the table, and why they should and could outsource those problems to us, I think is impactful to them. Our job is to make their job easier, and as long as they understand that and they can see the benefit of it, I think it's important. And also, we're someone they can blame when things go wrong. They don't have to take the heat themselves all the time. No, but I think we live in this world and we deliver these projects for a living. We've seen a lot of different things. We know how to navigate the waters in terms of potential issues that are coming up. Most projects have unique issues, but I don't think we come across all that many things that we've not seen something similar to before. So it gives us a good opportunity to help walk them through the process and help them understand how to navigate those waters. So I think outsourcing to a professional that does this for a living is usually the right move.
Kirsten, do you want to take a stab at what your elevator speech would be?
I'm also not so good at that 30-second timeline. But the other thing and the comment that I make often to clients that I'm talking to is, we've all heard this. Clients say, well, I'll just hire someone to run this project. Sure, of course, you can go out and hire a person, but hiring a professional firm, an ORPM firm, actually gives you access to the entire bench of that firm and all of the expertise that comes with that. All of our firms have architects, engineers, structural engineers, people with various backgrounds, furniture, relocation, whatever the case may be. And that bench is then available to you. So even though as a client you may have a specific person assigned to your project to work with you, if an issue comes up that person hasn't seen before, there's somebody else on the team that can jump in, and what we do is leverage the rest of the people on the team when those issues come up. So I think it's helpful for the client to understand that while they get a face of their project management, what they really have is the entire team behind them.
I agree. I always say you only know what you know. And for us, we only know what we know as well, but there are a ton of people behind us who know those other little bits and pieces that we don't know. And so that's a great point. You don't just hire the one-off, you hire a group of professionals. The other thing is, by doing that, you bring best practices, you bring lessons learned to the table, which is huge in a project. We discuss about the different risks. This is something you bring to the client to say, hey, I've experienced this before. I mean, prior to this panel, we were telling each other war stories. We could spend all day just on a panel of war stories and things that we can demonstrate as true events that happen in all of our careers that resulted in some cases not so great of an outcome, and in some cases really good, because we brought those lessons learned to the table. And that's what you get when you hire folks that have been doing this for a long time and know what they're doing.
Fran, what would you tell a prospective client what they should be looking for when selecting a project manager?
The one thing I tell all my clients when we're making any selection on any consultant is this person is going to be with you for the next 12 months, 18 months. You have to be comfortable with that person. I think good words are integrity, honesty. You don't always want to go with the low bidder because maybe that's not the person that you feel most comfortable with. It's got to be the person that you think will best serve you, because that small, maybe extra that you pay, they could probably save you in one change order. So that little bit and that you pay over the whole process is so small. You should just bring on the person that you're comfortable with. Bring on the person that you want to be your team member. Bring on the person that you see that you would hire for your firm to sit with you, because you have a day job. So this is the person that's going to do your job. You've been tasked with fitting out a space for your company. Well, everybody's going to know that you did that job. Well, you might as well have the best professional doing that job for you so that you can sit back and say, wow, it came out great, I'm excited, everybody in my company is excited, and you could be as proud of finishing that project as anybody else.
Do any of you recall a time where you had a client that was a real skeptic, but then in the end, the project was great and they were so relieved that they hired you?
What has happened for me is situations where I wasn't initially awarded a project. It went to someone else, either for money or for some other purpose. And I've gotten that call, we really liked you, but we had to go with this other person or firm or whatever. And you say, okay. And you say, if anything happens and you need me, I'm here. And that's happened more times than I can count, that 3, 4, 6 months later, I get a call. And then it's, now you're unwinding the crazy yes.
And also having clients that have internal real estate teams try to take on too much internally and do things themselves. Having relationships with clients and being there for them when that gets overwhelming, I think that's another kind of lessons learned in terms of where we see them coming back to us for some value. Just because you have a real estate team doesn't mean you could go ahead and deliver the types of complex projects that we might be talking about.
So that brings me to, what do you think, Mike, is the good, the bad, and the ugly of this profession?
I think we'll start with the good. I think the good news is exposure to a vast diversity of sectors, lots of different clients, and also there's a lot of activity right now. So there's a lot going on. I think we're all seeing that. So that's good. There's challenges that come along with the amount of activity, and there's some morphing in terms of what we offer and what we need to offer, but it's really, we need to be flexible. We need to be very flexible with our clients and what they're looking for. It's sometimes difficult to express to clients that we're not a commodity, we're a professional service, and we also have our own kind of business to run, so while their flexibility is important, we have people to manage on our end as well, so we get into a lot of issues with resourcing and staffing at the moment. There's a shortage of talent and things like that in the market. But I think overall, from where we came at the beginning of the pandemic to where we are now, I think I don't know that we would have expected we would have came so far so quickly. Things look not awesome in March of 2020, and I think fast forward, things are very busy. There's a lot going on out there, and the way things have changed a little bit, we've all had to adapt to that. I think the industry's done a good job at kind of rearranging how we provide our services to our clients. And to your point about the trusted advisor role, I don't think there's ever been a time where you need one more than you do right now.
I think for me, the ugly part of it is the reality that sometimes we can't control certain things, and we've got deep relationships with our clients, and we're trying so hard to have a great delivery, a great outcome, but there's just certain things that we just don't control, right? And we want so badly to do that.
Control freaks in the room.
Yes. Kirsten, what would you say is the right mix of skills required to be a successful project manager?
So other than being a control freak, I really think it's the foundational skills that matter. You need a lot of patience in this role. You have to deal with a lot of different personalities, and especially in a volatile environment like we have now, these are people's livelihoods and their jobs that are potentially on the line based on how we perform. So you need a lot of patience. And then I really think, communication skills are key, and you have to deliver consistent communication throughout the project at all times, whether it's good news or bad news. This may sound like an obvious thing, but really good organizational skills. Once you have those foundational skills, I can teach someone how to read a set of plans. They can learn, I'm not talking about someone coming in at an executive level and not having any of the background, but, I'm really excited about the ORPM Alliance recruiting the next generation of project managers, because this didn't even exist as a job when I was trying to decide what to be when I grew up. And since I haven't grown up yet, we don't have to make the tough decisions. Yeah. I'm really excited about that, because I think, a lot of the detailed aspects of our job, reading plans, being out on a construction site, knowing if something is what is shown on the drawings, you can learn that in the field, but you have to have those core organizational and communication skills to really do the job effectively.
Yeah, you never hear anyone saying, I went to college to be an owner's rep. You see all sorts of folks that come from different backgrounds, finance, all sorts of different things that are not necessarily industry specific. Architects, engineers, contractors become owners' reps. I remember working on the owner's side and really trying to tell my team, if I have to go somewhere and pull your foot out of your mouth, we have a problem. So you need that sort of person that understands that sometimes the owner is right even when they're wrong, and there's a way to tell them there's another way to do that without being abrasive. So the soft skills are super important.
So Joe, what do you think is the biggest obstacle to the recognition of the owner's rep?
Everyone thinks that they could do what we do. And we have colleagues on the other side of the table who are constantly undermining our ability to be owner's reps by telling the owner, I can do that. And I think we have, in some way or form, we've all touched upon it today, that we juggle a ton of balls in the air at any given time, and our focus is always universal, not detail. We focus the detail when we have to focus the detail, but we look at the big picture. And I think when you look at, whether it's an architecture firm, an engineering firm, a contractor, an equipment vendor, whoever it might be, they have a narrow vision because that's what their business is, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But our world is looking at the overall good of the project and the health of it, and how to deliver for our client a successful project. And so we need to look at each aspect of it, and we need to stay high above it. And many times we go to meetings, I'm sure we can tell those war stories too, where some design professionals telling the owner in the ear, I don't need this guy because I can do it. And some of it is because we keep them honest. We're like, no, that doesn't cost that, or no, you can't do this. That's hard to accept when you're on the other side, but I think that's our biggest challenge.
And a question for any of you, how important do you think specific sector experience is to the profession, to what we do for our clients?
How important do we think it is, or how important do the clients
Yeah,
think
how
it is?
important? Well, maybe both. Is there really an importance to having certain sector experience? Maybe healthcare
That's
is a
probably
little
an
bit
outlier,
unique,
yeah.
but there seems to be, I think, an opinion among clients that might be important.
You mean like when you call a law firm and they're like, how many law firms?
Right.
do you have?
Yeah.
I think it's exactly what she's
Because those
asking. Yeah.
offices are very different than any other office.
I hope there's
Their
no
paper's
clients on
different.
the call.
Yeah, the papers. Well, it's legal.
Yeah, that's right.
I think though, like Joe could do, even though you're healthcare specific, you could build a law firm. You could build. I think too many people, like you say, put too much emphasis on, well, how many not-for-profits have you built? A not-for-profit office looks like just any other office. Maybe you have a different budget. Maybe you're going into a 30-year condo. Those are things we have to understand, but it's an office, it's a space.
I think there are things, to your point, healthcare is very specific. I think education, and retail, of course, very different than commercial interiors. But I think if you're an experienced project manager, the other thing is we're not the experts in the room, but if we're good at what we do, we know the questions to ask to get the answers. And that's really important, is being comfortable sitting in a room with 20 people and going, hold on a minute, maybe I'm the idiot, but none of this makes sense, so somebody break it down, like I'm a 5-year-old with my applesauce pack, and explain to me why we're doing it this way. And then it's asking intelligent questions, and it all comes back to communication and being okay with being that person.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's overstated, to be honest. We're very process-driven the way we deliver projects, and the process is going to be the same whether you're delivering an office interior space or a museum. We're procuring a design team, we're setting a schedule, setting a budget, and managing to those things, calling out risks, et cetera. So from a core skill perspective, I think they're relatively similar. I think a lot of emphasis gets put, the law firm example is the perfect one. A lot of emphasis gets put on sector experience, but I think skill set is procedurally driven.
And retail's another one, I
Right.
think, where we see a lot of preference
Right.
for retail experience doing retail.
I think there are little nuances in each sector, right? I mean, you mentioned museums. We had a conversation recently. We're doing work at some of the large museums right now, and the value of that artwork is sometimes more than the value of the capital improvements we're doing.
Right.
So you have to look at it that way. But if you understand it, just like you would, and I don't want to equate artwork with people's lives, but you know that in healthcare, you understand that the most important thing in the room is the patient and the patient's family and the people who work there. That's the most important thing. Everything we do is secondary, and ultimately we're there to support the mission. So once you get those nuances, you understand that you have to drive safety, you have to drive all the things that are important in that space, just like you do in museums. But everything else, I mean, if you know how to process things and do things the way we do from project to project, you're smart enough, you can get it.
And then I think that every project you do, you learn something from.
Absolutely.
So if you do a museum, you learn something. When you do a retail space, you learn
It's
something.
applicable across sectors.
Right.
Exactly.
Mike, how do you think this profession will change over the next few years?
I think it's going to grow. I think the interest is there. I think the volume of opportunity is growing. I think efforts like this group and some of the other committees, I think, are making it clear to the industry that there's a need for folks like us. So I do think that I mentioned flexibility earlier. I do think that the way we provide our services is going to kind of ebb and flow in terms of what's driving the market. So we currently have supply chain issues, obviously there's that, but there's also been other changes in the industry with a lot of landlords providing turnkey spaces is a very popular trend right now, and I think there's a space for us in all those categories. I think getting the word out there and having clients really understand what it is that we do and the value that we add is helpful. But I also think there's a trend towards outsourcing rather than holding direct employees, and I think that's super beneficial to us as a group.
I think talent is going to be a major issue, right? Trying to pull people into the profession, attract people to the profession. Fran, what do you hope to see will happen with this profession over the next few years?
Well, I hope it keeps flourishing the way it is. I mean, I came into this from being an architect, then a construction on the construction side, and then coming to, a project management role. And I would just hope that so many more people would see what we can bring to the table. And I think that lately we've seen smaller groups, MBE and WBE, smaller, one of the, women broke off and made a little firm on their own. But I would think that people will start to see what we can bring to the table and start to open up to all of us and the young people. It's not, sometimes we have the demand that we have to have people who can staff the projects right away. So we're all pulling senior people in. And it's nice to be able to say, I can take an intern and bring an intern up through, and they want to come back and they want to learn more. And I think that as we grow with our integrity and as we grow as a group that people rely on, I think as professionals and as advisors, we'll just keep growing.
That was great. And we are just about to wrap up, but before we wrap up, I do want to ask Kirsten the same question.
If we can get to the point where we're almost the first, or the first person that clients talk to and call, we can really help in the very, very early stages of a project. You know, some experienced clients have used owner's reps before, but most, you know, listen, the fact of the matter is most people work in a job, whatever role they have, their company is moving or relocating or building a new office. They may only do that once or twice in their careers, even though we do it 20 times a week. And if the awareness is there, and a person who's in that office or at that desk who's told, okay, we're moving the office and we need you to figure out what to do next. If we're the first person they call, that would just make my day. It doesn't matter how early we get brought in. If we're not the first people on the job, there's just a little catch up for us to do. And then we're always kind of posturing maybe to the other people that, you know, we've all been brought into projects where some portion of the team is already there, and we really are supposed to be at the top of that pyramid. We're supposed to be the quarterback of the team. That's my hope, that our role in the real estate business is elevated to the point that people recognize that we should be the first phone call.
This has been fantastic. It's been an honor to moderate this panel and talk about our profession. I know it's something that we're all passionate about, and hopefully we can do great things together as the ORPM Alliance grows. So with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions.
So the question was, with all the changes in the industry, particularly in the office sector, what will this group bring to the table to our clients? So I think as a collective group, I mentioned earlier setting expectations. I think getting that information out to the market of some of the key issues, the strains on projects right now, some of the things that we're seeing, and getting that front and center with our clients, and some of the collective ways we've navigated those issues. I think it's important, and also it allows clients to get a kind of broader view of what they're in store for. Not only giving us more purpose, but also setting them up to know how to properly budget and plan and schedule for their upcoming projects, and what to sell to their boards in terms of what those expectations should be.
I think it's important that we mentioned that one of the things we discussed when we came together was exactly that this wasn't about competition. It was about elevating the presence of a project manager and owner's rep to the rest of the world, and that it was important to leave that at the door when we came together so that we can inform clients of the right approach to projects and how to make the decision to bring a project manager on. I was not asked the question of what we will see in the future, but I'll tell you, but I'm going to answer it anyway. It would be really great down the road if groups that were competitors can come together to challenge a project and bring on the skill set that they don't have. If you had told me years ago that two of the biggest CMs would get together and work on a major project here in New York City, I would have said you're crazy, and yet that's what they did. And I think if you have a firm that specializes in law, as we talked about, someone else that does something else, and they could joint venture to bring value to the client, that would be pretty cool.
I was also going to add that what the ORPM Alliance can bring, I hope, is education. You know, we're talking about doing, Deborah has grand plans of a monthly panel. We'll see if that happens. But, you know, having these regular panels available to clients and tenants and owners in the business that they can watch at their convenience on our LinkedIn page. I think that education is important. I'll just leave it at that. That's what we should be bringing to the industry as a whole as well.
Well, I'll finish the way we started. This was our first live event. We've all been working together, collaborating on this alliance for almost 2 years. And today was our first live event. We've never really been together in person. So I think this has been an amazing experience.
Milestone.
Yeah.
It is a milestone.
You're not 6 feet away from me, though.
Well, thank you, everyone. I think that wraps up our panel for today.